Hey, what's up, everybody? This is John Odermatt, your host here on Felony Friday, and I want to try something new. Don't have an ad for you here or anything like that, but I have a request. So I want to try something with Apple Podcast reviews. They're very important in podcasts, and they help you get more attention and eyeballs on your podcast. You get in the, you rank up in the categories, all that stuff. So I would like people to give 5-star reviews. So I'm going to reward people who give us 5-star reviews, review the podcast, say something nice, and then if after you do that, if you drop either a topic you'd like me to talk about, a question, and ask me anything, you can ask me a random question, and I will address it on the show if it's appropriate. But you can drop that after your 5-star rating and your review, put what you want to talk about there on the show. I will talk about it, and it helps the show. It helps you influence the show. It's a win-win. So please consider doing that. Make sure, even if you listen on Spotify or Overcast or whatever, do it on Apple Podcast. They have the most control right now, so do it there, and we'll see what happens. All right, thank you very much.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, where you can subscribe on any app out there, any podcasting app. Just go to Lions of Liberty podcast, hit subscribe, leave us a review like I talk about at the top of the show. Best if you leave that review on Apple Podcasts, because that is where the algorithm really does the most damage in a good way, as they say. I'm not going to read through any reviews today. I'm going to save it for next week because I have a long interview today with an awesome guest with Rufus Rochell and Amy Povah. Rufus telling his story of serving 32 years, 3 decades in prison. And get this, the prosecutors had zero drugs, found zero drugs, zero drug transactions, all entirely based on hearsay, ghost dope evidence, ghost dope testimony, as they say. So completely absurd, completely ridiculous. Rufus is a fantastic guy. I can't wait for you to hear this interview. I don't want to delay anymore. So let's just get right to it. Okay, my guest today on Felony Friday is Rufus Rochell. Rufus walked out of FCI Coleman just this past April. On April 24th, the BOP gave him home confinement. In 1988, he was sentenced to 40 years and 8 months for conspiracy with intent to distribute 50 grams or more of crack with possession with intent of the same amount, and obstruction of justice. Prior to that, he only had very minor infractions. So Rufus is here today to share his story. Rufus, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you. To you, John, and the audience that's listening to you. My name is Rufus Rochell, and as you previously stated, I got arrested May the 31st, 1988, and my case probably is considered one of the oldest crack cocaine cases in the United States, where individual is still primarily in custody, because I'm on home confinement, which I was released on the April 24th, 2020. Mm-hmm. Yes, to home confinement. And I presently have one of the boxes on my ankle boxes on my ankle, right now, So that would substantiate being in custody, because I have to call in each and every day, at night also to the center, to verify my whereabouts. But anyway, as you stated, I was arrested. As I previously stated, I was arrested May the 31st, 1988. And I was never in possession of a single grain of drugs, no wiretap, no undercover buy, no surveillance, nothing of that nature, And I went to trial. I was offered a plea of 8 years back in 1988, prior to trial. And I rejected the plea because I was never in possession of any drugs. And I pursued it to trial, based on the evidence that was alleged in the jury instruction and based on the indictment also in the verdict form. The judge previously, read the instructions to the jury. As I stated, I was indicted on for conspiracy, as you stated, conspiracy with intent to distribute 50 grams or more of crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm. Were you indicted? Was it just you, or was it a group?
No, I had co-defendants also.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 5 other individuals indicted on the indictment stemming from the Northern District of Florida, the Gainesville, Florida Division.
Okay.
And as previously, as stated, the indictment alleged 50 grams or more of crack cocaine. That's count 1, conspiracy. And count 2 was possession with intent to distribute 50 grams or more. And even when the trial began, the judge instructed the jurors that they could only find us guilty of 50 grams or more, within that range. And anyway, he instructed the juror in accordance to the jury instruction. Then he came back and in terms of the indictment, read the indictment that in terms of what we were charged with, 50 grams or more, and possession with intent to distribute 50 grams or more. Then the jury reached a verdict eventually, on the 50 grams or more. But here's the thing, even after I was sentenced, as I previously stated, I was never, ever in possession of a single grain of drug, no wiretap, no undercover buy, no surveillance. Even if they had to bring a forensic to test whatever drugs there were, they would never be able to test any because there were no drugs. It was what we was tried on primarily was ghost drugs, meaning there's no drugs. And
so
the juror found me guilty.
So where did the ghost drugs, for people out there listening, ghost drugs, that's people who are testifying saying, yes, such and such, yes, Rufus sold me this much or whatever. So were any of those people your co-defendants, or were they?
No. What they did was, this was during that time frame, the University of Florida had a scandal, drug scandal, with involving their star basketball player, Vernon Maxwell, who played, I think he played with Philadelphia and possibly Houston. And he alleged that, each time he was outside of the campus, he tested positive for drugs, assumably, And when he was on campus, he never tested positive for drugs. So they confronted, from what we found out, they confronted him and wanted to know who he was getting drugs from. Who was this connection? I guess they got with him and other basketball players there at the University of Florida. And anyway, he informed them that he was getting drugs from a gentleman by the name of Ice, and others. So, not knowing one Ice from the other, they pulled my first cousin, Willie Ice Reed. He had the same Ice, they called him Iceberg. He had the same similar name to the person that Vernon Maxwell was alleging, and others was alleged. And so they pulled him in my car, my Saab. I had a Saab turbo. And they took pictures of my car and took pictures of my license plate. And so anyway, they found out someone alleged that this is the Ice that they were speaking of, So therefore, that's where they weaved all us together, my cousin and I. They made them empty their pockets with the money that 2 of them was in a Greg and Willie, was in my Saab, driving my Saab. And they hadn't even been staying in Gainesville maybe a month and a half, if that long, And anyway, they were so sure that those were the guys that was selling or filtering drugs to the University of Florida athletes. And they took us, they pulled me, arrested me, driving, and they let them go. They had $300 and some. They had them laying down on the road, and they took pictures of the money to $300 and some that they had, and they let them go, And anyway, I guess some months later, I'm driving my Saab, and they pulled me. They pulled me in my Saab, and the city police department of Gainesville, and they held me outside of my car for maybe almost an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so I'm trying to determine what are they apprehending me for, and they could never tell me. They just say, we don't know yet. And so I'm standing outside of my car, and I guess maybe about 2 hours later, they finally put me in a police car, city of Gainesville police car. And they come over to the car, and I asked them, what am I arrested for? Because they went all through my car, and they say it looks like sales of cocaine. And so, I knew, that was some fabricated charge, because I didn't sell nobody any cocaine, And so, anyway, they took me down to the city police department, and they had me in a room, and I guess maybe 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours later, a officer came in there with the blue jeans and, Western style boots and all of that. And then he says to me, "Oh, this is what you look like. That's what you look like. If you tell me what we want to know, the agent, he'll be here soon, the DEA agent. If you tell us what we want to know, you can walk right out of here. But if you don't, you're going to be in here for the rest of your life, primarily." And he started asking me about various persons, and I didn't know the ones he was asking me about, And he said, "Oh, you want to be a smart ass," and So he said, "Well, we'll see that you never get out of jail." So later on, the agent came and they took me down to the post office, and had me in the post office. I guess that's where the federal court, system set. As I'm sitting in there, they continuously questioned me, and I couldn't answer the things that they was asking me, So they took me to a magistrate hearing the next day, and eventually took me to the Lachue County Jail, where they held me for a little while, and then eventually they took me to a jail maybe 30 miles out from there, in Hamilton, Hamilton County Jail in Jasper, Florida. And as I'm sitting out there, they eventually bring one of my cousins out there also. And so they got us in the jail. Terry, they bring Terry Reed there, my first cousin. And they got us in the jail, but they got him in a different cell, but they bring, I guess maybe a few days later, I call home, and my sister tells me they got us all over the newspaper involving the University of Florida athletes, saying that we was selling drugs to the basketball players there at the University of Florida, Vernon Maxwell and all of them, And they made this story hit the news, and it was in every newspaper primarily around the country, And the lawyers were saying that it was a classic case and all of this here stuff, The St. Petersburg paper ran the probe and all of this here stuff. And also many, as a matter of fact, I got numerous articles now. And they about they ran all these articles primarily continuously about it. So finally, as the trial got ready to wind, I tell you what, they eventually gave us a witness list, and the witness list had, I know a couple guys that was, they placed them in the cell with me. They brought them from prison, and they placed them in the cell with me to try to identify, so that they could make a positive identification of me or fabricate an identification of me.
Right. Did you know or recognize any of the guys?
No, I didn't recognize them. What had happened was they called, during the roll, they brought them in late at night on, around, I guess maybe 12 or 1 o'clock at night. The marshals or whoever it was, they brought them in there and they put them specifically in the cell with me so that they could see who I was or hear my name, and then they'll be able to fabricate a story against me. And so, anyway, the next day the officers come through and do a roll call, and I happened to hear the names, and I looked on my list. I said, these are the same, two of the same guys that they got on the witness list, And so I called my lawyer, and told my lawyer what I had just experienced. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes, sir. I'm extremely positive. He said, I'll tell you what, you call me back in about an hour. And I guess maybe 15 minutes later, they got the two guys and took them out of there. And I didn't see them anymore until I went to trial. And they came in there and testified against me, the same guys, And they said that, I think one of them said that he seen me with drugs or got some drugs from me or something to that extent, And they never got anything from me, And I come to find out, they said that they dropped, one of the guys had escape charges and drug charges and weapon charges, and they dropped all of that so that he could testify against me. But anyway, as the trial went on, as we got ready to go to trial, the reporters was outside of the courtroom, numerous of reporters from everywhere. And all of them, they took, as we got off the marshal's van, they jumped from behind the van and took pictures of us, And when they had us handcuffed together, me and my two co-defendants together, they had us on the front page of the newspaper the following day. And the judge informed the reporters, told them that they could leave because they didn't expect any of the athletes to testify against us. So he issued a gag order also. And we found out the reason why he didn't expect any of the athletes to testify against us because they had the wrong persons in custody,
right? Me
and my cousin. And now what they had to do, they had to go and grab guys out of the jails, out of the prisons and stuff to create a case because they had done put us all in the media, and now possibility that we was going to, they thought that we were going to sue them for false arrest and all of this stuff. So now they had to create a case by cut deals with guys in prison because all the guys that testified against me came from prison.
Because the athletes, if they point to you and say this guy sell you drugs, they don't have any incentive to say yeah that was him. They're not holding anything over them. They're not they're not in prison. They don't have any time that can be taken off their sentence. So they could be truthful and say no, that's not the guy.
No, see the thing is that they had the wrong guys. The guy that we found out a year after we were convicted, almost a year after we got convicted, they indicted the ones, Ice and the other guys that they were talking about.
Right.
And they had Vernon Maxwell came along in that trial and said the Ice that he was talking about, speaking of, he went to school with him. They was the best of friends, and those other guys. And so they had the wrong guys. We were the wrong guys, wrong person. And they indicted, I think it was 9 or 10 guys in that case with them that was affiliated with the University of Florida. And we were the wrong person.
Hey, Rufus, I'm gonna pause your story for a minute here and introduce Amy Povah, who has joined us. Of course, Amy has been on the podcast before to share her own story of injustice that she went through, and also to talk about the Cando Foundation, the great work she's doing to work for clemency for many people. And over the course of the past several weeks here, there's been a lot of people, including obviously yourself, Rufus, getting out on either compassionate release or home confinement like yourself. So, Amy, welcome back to Felony Friday.
Oh, thank you, John. And just listening to Rufus's story, which is an important story, reminds me and should be alarming to everyone who does not understand that our drug conspiracy laws are so convoluted, and it makes it impossible to prove your innocence, because it becomes a free-for-all of people who are incentivized to embellish their testimony, to make up quantities, to accuse people of things that they may or may not have done. It's almost impossible to defend yourself against allegations. And I don't think the public is very well aware of the fact that so many people that we are trying to help who are in prison are convicted on what's referred to as ghost dope and testimony only. They no longer need tangible evidence to support a guilty verdict in the form of audio recordings or video, or in the long time ago, they used to wear a wire on people. They used to do a controlled buy. Now it's just people who will take a witness stand and point the finger at you. And that should really be chilling to so many people who need to understand that there's not a whole lot of protection between you and a prison cell.
Absolutely. And so Rufus, after going through this trial, this experience, and having this happen to you, you get your sentence read out. What was going through your mind at that point in time? What kind of state were you in?
Because as Amy previously stated, it's one of the most difficult things there is trying to challenge something that's not there, because there's no drugs there, there's nothing concrete there, and you chasing a ghost, because there's ghost drugs, and so if you bring a investigator, or you bring a forensic in there, and get them to determine what percentage of the drugs is crack cocaine, as I'm being in there, and crack cocaine being you're being punished 100 times more severe than powder cocaine, then you're not able to make a determination, neither. And then what's so ironic about this situation, the prosecutor, Linda Paget, she's the assistant U.S. attorney during that time frame, they brought one guy in during the, from prison, and they brought him, he testified against me. And so they wanted to get a clarification from this guy in terms of what he stated, because they had various things that was conflicting, which he stated, and the attorney and the prosecutor, they got together, and the judge, they wanted to bring him back up there on the stand in terms of redirect to get some clarification from him. And after he testified again, they got clarification. The the prosecutor, Linda Paget, asked Judge Maurice Pohl, did she do a good job? And the judge stated to her, you did very well. We don't want to press our luck here. You know, which is a clear case of collusion, you know, because it shows that they were in collusion with each other, you know, because the statement, the question, and the answer response that he gave her upon her question him, did she do a good job, you know, in terms of pursuing those questions and answers against me, you know. So it was a no-win situation. Everything primarily was set up, you know. And then even when, you know, with the jurors, when you found guilty in the court of law, you know, there's a reason why they don't have the jurors present during the sentencing phase, you know. And because if the jurors had checked, which they checked the verdict form for 50 grams, you know, right within the 50-gram range, which I would have got sentenced or supposed to have gotten sentenced for 50 grams of crack cocaine, you know. But they seen where 50 grams wouldn't have gave me the type of sentence that I received. So what they did was they came through the back door during the sentencing phase with the judge, the prosecutors, the agents, and the probation and parole officer. They are present. And the juror is not present because had the juror been present during that particular phase of the sentencing phase, what I got sentenced for, they would have objected to that, contested that, because the fact is they sentenced me to 24 kilos of crack cocaine. That primarily gave me a death sentence, which, you know, this is what really, you know, that's why I was in prison almost 3 decades.
How much is 24 kilos of crack cocaine? That's
at 100. That's 24,000 grams of crack cocaine at 100-to-1 ratio in reference to powder cocaine. In other words, the penalty is 100-to-1 more severe than powder cocaine. You know, and that way, that's why it took almost 32 years, 3 decades plus, to get out of prison. You know, in other words, because I didn't take an 8-year plea, they decided to crucify me with this 400 and some plus months, you know, behind bars. And that's what they do because they don't want the juror present, because the juror, they sentence you for everything that the juror didn't find you guilty of. Mm-hmm. That's where the punishment comes in. And that's why so many men and women are held in prison with these life sentences, 2 life sentences, 40, 50 years and more, because of that type of scenario that's going on in the courts behind closed doors when the juror is not present. So I come in at the age of 37 years old. When I left out of prison, I'm 68 years old now. You know, I'll be 69 this year, October. You know, and they gave me $180 when I exited the prison.
Wow.
And I got a brother that's sitting up in there with 2 life sentences, right as I speak, you know. And his first time in prison, he come in a hefty person. He come in at the age of 27, and now he's 58 years old, Richard Williams. And he was an honor student in school, Mr. Football, and often helped so many kids. He helped them with their homework. He did everything. He would have gave a person the shirt off his back, you know. And they gave him, now he's in a wheelchair, you know. And, you know, so out of 30 plus years, I was only worth $180 a when I walked out of prison, exit the prison gate, and I did numerous of things to help people while I was in there, fundraisers for Katrina victims. I helped get a young boy a prosthetic eye, from behind bars.
Wow.
Young lady that was a popular radio disc jockey there in Orlando, 102 Jams. She died having her first daughter, little kid. And she never got a chance to hold her kid because her blood pressure went up and she died from aneurysm. And I got with the warden at the prison and put together a trust fund for her daughter and raised $1,700 and some dollars and put it in her daughter's trust fund and requested to do a memorial service at the prison for Dawn Blackstock. They call her Break of Dawn. She used to come to various programs and doing the reentry programs, which I helped put together for the inmates and so forth. Those are just a few of the things,
Mm-hmm.
But I let Amy elaborate on some of the things, because I don't like to speak of the things I did, because all of the things that I did was through the grace of God,
Hey, everybody, taking a quick break here from the show. Wanted to remind you all to check out my man Tyler Colford, a.k.a. Crypto Man, and his new song, Free Ross. If you didn't hear my recent interview with Lynn Ulbricht, that was Felony Friday, episode 230. Interviewed Lynn Ulbricht, played Tyler's song, Free Ross. It's fantastic, phenomenal. Not just for the message of freeing Ross Ulbricht, but overall for changing the broken criminal justice system. All the proceeds from the Free Ross song, hashtag Free Ross by Crypto Man. You can find it on Spotify and Amazon Music. 100% of the proceeds from the song, hashtag Free Ross by Crypto Man, go towards freeing Ross Ulbricht. So please check it out.
These are perilous times when they ruin your lives over victimless crimes and they sever your ties from your business, loved ones, and family. Why? New slave labor, they barely pay you. Don't care about work ethic or major.
All right, another quick little break here. I want to tell you about an awesome podcast from another supporter of our show named the Scariff Scuttlebutt. I know, it's a strange name, but sometimes that's good. Sticks in the mind, sticks in the craw. So anyway, when you're not listening to the Best Libertarian podcast, there's some other things out there. I know a lot of you are into sci-fi. I am into sci-fi. I do enjoy Star Wars, and this is a no-shill Star Wars podcast. So they talk about everything from the books to the movies to television to video games. They do deep dives into the saga, not just skimming on the surface to really get in there. So they talk about topics such as politics, propaganda, and even fate versus free will as well in the context of this saga, spinning off from that to have really fascinating conversations. They're not afraid to speak their minds. That much I would know, and you should know if they're supporters of this podcast. So again, you can find them on Twitter at Scariff Podcast, that's SCARIF Podcast, or of course, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts.
So Amy, Rufus mentioned before that his case is one of the oldest crack cocaine cases like that, being sentenced to that amount of time from 1988, right?
Yes.
So when did you first hear of Rufus's case, Amy?
Oh, Rufus reached out to me, actually called me. In fact, I think I was in DC for some event the first time that he called and asked me if the Cando Foundation would advocate on his behalf. And I first tried to beg off. I said, oh my God, I said, we've stopped taking cases. We're overwhelmed. And he is so gracious, and I do have to give Rufus props for some of the stories he just shared, because Rufus has done more for complete strangers while he was behind bars than many people who are free do for their own family members. And I really want that to sink in to your audience, because this is not a man who ever needed to serve a single day behind bars. This is a good man with a good heart who has done so many wonderful things. And he asked me to help John Bolin So I communicated with him. And then Rufus was just so persistent. He really would just call back and inquire how I was doing. And he endeared himself so much. He was just such a good person that I was like, okay, we're going to put you on the Cando website. We're going to go all in. And then from then on, Rufus would call at least every week, sent cards to my mother, who is terminally ill, had everybody on the compound sign the cards. I can't tell you how many cards he sent to her. He'd get on the phone talking to her to try to make her feel better. This is a beautiful soul, and I want people to understand this is who we're locking up in this country. It's just not right, and something has got to change drastically.
100% agree with that. And, that's one of the main reasons I do this show, because people these stories have to get out there. These individuals, people like Rufus, everyday Americans need to hear their heart and what they've been through. And I mean, it's what I was reading prior to the interview. I was reading the write-up on all the things that you've done while in prison, Rufus. And it blows you away, really. So that's
I lost both my parents, and my dad, he was a pastor, doing the he raised me, he was my stepfather, but he was just like a father. He was the father. He was a pastor. During the whole time he ministered, he never took a salary, and he was even when I got sentenced, he couldn't believe I was being sentenced because, he questioned in terms of the drugs, because I was in the process of getting married during that time frame, and my only daughter was born while I was in prison, and never had a chance to spend a day with her outside of the visiting room, in prison. And, even when I left prison, I walked out the gate, the staff, there was out there, certain ones were standing out there around my family. To see me walk out, they even shedded tears, seeing me leave.
Well, I'd like to add, John, we really need to all try to lift up Rufus's brother now, Rick, who I don't know if Rufus mentioned that he's in a wheelchair and he's a first offender. We're waiting on some paperwork from him. It hasn't come in the mail yet, which is disturbing. But and Rufus only has home confinement. He still has to serve out the rest of his sentence wearing an ankle monitor, but we do have his petition over at the White House and are quite confident that he's in a good position to get clemency. We just don't know when that's going to happen after the pandemic and the civil disobedience that's been going on in the nation. It seems like clemency may have gone to the back burner. We certainly hope not, but we have to keep lifting up people like Rufus's brother and so many others like people we have on the website, because these are good people who are just being warehoused. This isn't punishment. This is a slave labor trade. It's cruel. It's to me, it's a humanitarian violation, and we all need to work together to bring these people home.
Yeah, it's certainly not corrections. It's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be corrections. You're supposed to go in there and come out
rehabilitated,
rehabilitated, and ready to contribute to society. But so often, people are just beaten down in there.
How can you be rehabilitated when they gave so many people life sentences, which means no parole? And also they expect people to come out after they're unemployable at 50, 60, 70. And how are people supposed to build up their life again and have a pension or a retirement fund? It's no, they're crippling people, and we were considered disposable. I don't know if people really followed the timeline, but no sooner did we end the Cold War with Russia than the Reagan-Bush administration resurrected the old drug war. So this nation is always at war because it's profitable, and the budgets have to keep going for the big war machine, which includes every agency under the sun. And I just think the timing was interesting, that we have a history of this country is always being at war. We're always at war with someone, even when we declare it against our own citizens. Yes,
exactly right. That's exactly what we're doing. We're at war with our own citizens. It's sick. Rufus, I want to give you the chance to share anything else that you want to about your experience or about what it's been like to be home now for 2 months, going on 2 months.
I had an opportunity, a few weeks after I was out, to speak to Congress also, I spoke to, are you there? Hello?
Yeah,
I spoke to the top congressmen there in Washington, in terms of the epidemic, the corona epidemic, and how long I've been in prison, and also, and they found it very difficult believe that I had been in all those years, sitting in there, because a lot of the even serial killers would have possibly beat me out of there, out of prison, And had I, people, ones like Amy, if they wouldn't have came to my aid, then I would have been a forgotten soul, primarily, And, because being in there for a period of time, you like forgotten, And because even you look at the ones that's coming here now, a lot of them is getting out. And then the ones that's been in there for a period of time, it's like they overlooked, forgotten, It's like they're in a cemetery, buried in the far back, and completely forgotten. And thank God for Amy, because she came in there and then she made it known that you all have forgotten Rufus in here, He's still in prison behind bars, And then once she brought to the, enlighten others that I was still in here, then numerous of people start saying, now's the time to help this man get out of prison, Because I tell you, I can't thank her enough, because she's really been there 24/7, and she stayed in contact with my family to let them know the things that she's doing to get me out of prison. If it wasn't for her, right now, I wouldn't be out of prison right now. I would have probably been one of the ones that's buried in the sand in prison right now, in one of those rooms locked in, just like numerous other men and women as I speak tonight. And, they only gave me $180, as I stated, when I left prison, And, how long and how far is that going to take a man, in there, when you step out of there with 32 years almost inside of the prison,
Yeah, well, what do they expect unless you, unless you have support from your family,
right,
to take care of you, give you a place to live,
right,
and I'm sure not everyone does.
Yes, and that, and that's a big advantage, really, for my sister, Cheryl Bolden, and her husband, Bob Bolden, give me a place to stay, here outside of Gainesville, Florida. And it's a blessing, And it's a blessing to have ones like I stated in reference to Amy and others that's reaching out for me and speaking in my behalf, because, you know, a lot of the men and women that's in those places don't have voices, you know, outside of the prison, you know. And I've been going out every night, primarily is doing a Facebook Live, you know, speaking for those men and women that don't have a voice, you know, every night, primarily since I left prison, doing their Facebook Live, you know, and speaking in reference to those many men and women that I left behind. Because even when I left, they was telling me, Rufus, don't forget us. Come on, we need you to help us speak for us, man. You know, help us get out of here, because we don't want to die in here from the coronavirus, you know. And as I stated also, you know, when you give a man a life sentence, you know, when a judge sentences a man to a life sentence, he's actually saying, I'm sentencing you to a death sentence. Because if you read their judgment commitment orders, you see on there where it says continue until deceased. You know, so that's, in so many words, you know, they don't want to tell their family that they've been sentenced to a death sentence, you know, because if they don't get any support, they're going to die behind bars. They're going to die behind bars. I'm looking at many men. I've seen many men and women during my tenure. There's all you can look in their eyes and see is that, you know, because, you know, people look at them and they don't, you know, they're saying, well, he's going to die behind bars. And then not only is he doing time, his family is doing time as well. And that's why it's so important that the ones that's listening to me and Amy and others on your radio station come and support those young men and women that's incarcerated in those prisons. Because when they're talking about criminal justice reform, if they don't take prison as a priority in terms of criminal justice reform, then they're not doing anything, because some of the same ones that you just seen over the past 2 weeks are some of the same ones that was involved in those same type of situations with men and women that's in those prisons. And it's important that we get them out of prison. You know, it's extremely important that they support Amy Povah with the Cando Foundation, and it's important that they donate funds to help those organizations as well. You know, be able to help others to walk out of those prisons. And that's, in closing, I appreciate each and everything that you all are doing to help me and numerous others, you know, because it's not just about me. It's about so many other families, and one, they got a lot worse situation than mine. You know.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Amy?
Yeah, Rufus is so humble. I would just like to say that it would be dishonest for me to take any credit for him coming home or any organization, because Rufus, frankly, got Rufus out, the warden and the staff. Now, if he gets clemency, I'll take credit for that because I worked hard on his clemency petition and put it together and submitted it. But at the end of the day, I did see where the staff in his progress report, and I did communicate with his case manager, supported his clemency. I never see that. They put it right in there that they support his relief for Rufus in the form of, they said, pardon. And but he got home confinement because of the way he served his time. And I do believe that the staff there is very well aware of Rufus's character and who he is as a soul. And I think they wanted to get him home and protected because of the person that he is. And that's a lesson to everybody who's in. I also would like to say that Rufus has a Cash App he could use some help. So if anybody wanted to help, he's on Facebook under Rufus Rochell. And if anybody wants to reach out to ask how to support him, we would direct you to his Cash App. But in closing, I would like to say that there are so many reentry organizations, and there's millions and millions of dollars earmarked for reentry. But I honestly don't know where that money goes, because everybody who comes home, we try to give $200 to people just as a little helper. But reentry organizations, it just seems like it's being eaten up in salaries, office space, programs. These people have programmed themselves silly while they are in prison. They don't need more programs. They need housing, jobs, a computer, a cell phone, a car, and clothes. And I would like to see a reentry organization that helps provide those in the form of vouchers or some way that people can team up and get a voucher for a computer from maybe the Bill Gates Foundation. But there's so much that could be done that isn't being done for people like Rufus and everybody who's walking out they've lost everything. 32 years Rufus was in prison. Mm-hmm. That's shameful. But he has to build back. The families can't support these people day to day forever. Everybody needs, especially after a pandemic and everything that's going on. So I would like to encourage that we somehow all work together to try to create a bridge for these people who are coming home. And Rufus is first on the list for anybody who wants to give. They should give directly to Rufus.
And if we can get the link to donate directly to Rufus, I can put it on the show notes page if we're able to do that. That'll be at lionsofliberty.com/FF234.
I can give it to you. It's one, you put the dollar bill sign in front of Rufus, R-U-F-U-S, Rochell, R-O-C-H-E-L-L-E, and you put 5151 behind Rochell. It's a dollar bill sign in front of Rufus, and R-U-F-U-S, Rochell, R-O-C-H-E-L-L-E, and 51 at the end of that, Rochell. And you make both R's capital, Rufus and Rochell. The R in Rufus and the R in Rochell capital. And
I'll send you a message on Facebook with it to make sure I have it right before I put it in the on the page. But before I let you go, Rufus, any party words for my audience?
I appreciate each and every one of you. This listening to this program, it brings tears to my eyes. Really. And sitting here and, I got to do a Facebook Live tonight, and speak to many, the ones that listen to me. I try to do that. Not only that, I don't speak about prison every night. I speak about trying to keep kids and families from going to prison, rather than a lot of the ones that's already there. I try to keep families together as well, and supporting one another, And in order to do that, we got to stay out of those places too, And I appreciate each of you, and I'm just trying to make things, the best of the situation I'm in, And that's what's important. And I see, it feels so good to be free. It seems that just to look around and breathe fresh air and look out from beyond a wall or razor wire fence, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing, And being trapped in a room, locked in a room, because we were locked down since March the 31st. March the 31st. Until I even left in April the 24th. They still locked down right now, So just imagine an individual locked in those places like animals, and many men and women that deserve their freedom. And each time I go to sleep at night, it seems like part of me is still there, because with the ones that I think about, like John Bolden and my Richard William, my brother, and numerous, so many others I think of in there with the 3 and 4 life sentences. There's, you got women's in there. I wrote an article even and sent it to President Obama. It was entitled, it was about a couple girls that was in prison. One girl had 13 life sentences, and the other young lady had a life sentence also. And sometimes they sentence individuals, when they give you all those life sentences, that's overkill. That's the overkill. And you walking around in prison, you wonder how a person could smile and laugh and be so humble with so much time. But those seem like the most humble ones. There is the ones that has all the time in there and doing everything possible thing that they can do to get back out, to prove that they could be a productive citizen. Because there's many of them in there that has the same personality as Rufus has. But the thing is, they deserve a second chance. A second chance. Mm-hmm. And I firmly feel within my heart there's many men and women, if they got a second chance, they would be extremely productive and law-abiding if they just got that second chance. Just like I got a second chance. In closing, I thank you all, and I appreciate you all. And I just got to keep fighting for others as well, too, And I thank you for bringing me on your show. And that's about as much as I can say. Thank you. God bless each of you for allowing me to come on this show and for supporting me and listening to me. And I look forward to coming back on your show eventually with Amy once again, because she have been more than an advocate. She has been an angel sent from God, from so many men and women that's locked up in prison. And at the same time, while take care of the mother, and, many, don't know the situation she's going through with her mom, And I know the feeling because, I went somewhat through the same situation with my mom before she passed not very long ago. I lost my father, and so it's a hard area, And so I want each of you to pray for her mother, the healing of her mother, too, and pray for Amy as well. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Rufus, and God bless you. And
thank you.
Just want to encourage the people out there listening to go to the show notes page, lionsofliberty.com/FF233, and consider donating to the Cash App link there. And I want to thank Amy Povah for coming on the show and everything that she does with the Cando Foundation, and hopefully we can have Rufus back on here when Rufus gets his clemency, and maybe also when others that Amy is advocating for, and one of them being Rufus's brother. Hopefully they get clemency as well. So I think there's bright days ahead, and this system and this injustice has to change. It just has to. It can't go on. So thank you both for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Another great episode of Felony Friday. As you know, Felony Friday is one of 3 shows we have here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, we kick off every single week with our Monday show hosted by Mark Claire. It's our longest running program, our flagship program, where Mark interviews leaders in the Liberty movement. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land hosted by Brian McWilliams. It's your weekly shot of culture, comedy, liberty, swearing, and just good fun. Check that out. You can get all 3 shows by subscribing for the great price of $0 per month. You get everything that we have here. So please check everything out. And if you like it all, please consider supporting what we're doing here at Lions of Liberty. A great way to do that is by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Another great way of doing that is by following, liking, sharing our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Lions of Liberty. On Instagram and Twitter, we are at Lions of Liberty. And the discussion forum where all the greatest and brightest minds go to talk about politics, liberty, everything that's happening in the world today, current events, the Lions of Liberty Forum on Facebook, which you can find by typing Lions of Liberty Forum in the search bar at the top of Facebook, clicking search, comes up, say you want to join it, answer a question, bam, you're in, and the rest is just going to be a great journey for you. So check that out. That's all I have for today. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.